Hello and welcome to EPR with your favorite environmental enthusiasts, Nic and Laura. On today's episode, Laura and I discuss women in STEM. I sit down with Callie Veelenturf to talk about sea turtles, rights of nature, and the right to a safe working environment. It's a powerful interview and Callie is absolutely fantastic, so you have to give it a listen. And finally, during certain times of day, Point Nemo is closer to the International Space Station than any body of land. So, how about that?
All right. Two things I don't know what they are or where they are.
So Point Nemo is the furthest place away from bodies of water, or from land. It's the furthest away you can be from land in the entire world. So it is the furthest place away, and it's actually closer to the International Space Station than land when the International Space Station is over the point. So how cool is that?
You get a
Yeah, I'll take a hum. That's good. You know, it's not the dad joke one, but you know, what is? Hit that music.
All right. After 2 years taking the conference virtual, the NAEP Conference Committee and the Florida Association of Environmental Professionals is excited to welcome you to the Westin Fort Lauderdale Beach Resort in Florida, May 16th through 19th this year, 2022. Registration is now open, so head over to www.naep.org for details. Nic and I love doing this show, and if you love hearing it and would like to have us keep doing it, then we need your help. We can't do it without our awesome sponsors. Please head on over to environmentalprofessionalsradio.com and check out the sponsor form for details. Let's get to our segment. We could just talk about the Women in STEM event coming up and why it's important.
We could do that. That would be good. That would be a good thing. So, so I hear there's a Women in STEM event at NAEP this year.
There is.
What's that about?
Finally. So, you know, we've been planning this forever. Actually, we did, 2018, 19? Mm-hmm. We did a Women in STEM event at the conference. We had because it was virtual.
It was virtual. Yeah, it was virtual.
Because we had this panel session. Mm-hmm. And we had to do it virtual, so that must have been 2022. And the panel session was to summarize what TBAEP, the Tampa chapter, had done, because we started a Women's in STEM event 7 years ago, and it sold out. It came from, we had a membership meeting and we were brainstorming, how do we get more members? What kind of events could we do? And somebody said, there's not enough women events. Everything's a golf tournament or going out for beers. And not that women don't like going out for beers, that's for sure. But a lot of people have kids and they want to bring their kids to an event, or, you know, women don't always, you know, any event you went to is a man's event because there's more men, and because women have got to go home and take care of the kids. So there's more men there than women. Just was. Yeah, so the comment was nothing, you know, not a criticism or anything. It was just I would like a women event, you know? And so I was okay, cool. Let's do that. And we'll see how much interest there is. The interest was through the friggin' roof.
Of course. Yeah.
So we ended up having it kind of like speed dating. And, you know, so it'd be casual so that you'd be able be able to attend the event and then sit at a table with a woman in a position of quote unquote power. So we had the director of DEP, we had, you know, some people at the university, we had women in government, DEP, obviously, but it was just very intimate and nice. So we at the conference 2020, we had that panel to explain that. And then afterwards we had a networking event. So women could come to that. Men allies are kind of welcome to come, but at the same time, those who have come have felt I probably shouldn't be here. So they don't usually come twice. Because we're talking about women's stuff. In the breakout sessions, we will talk about challenges for women in working their way up the career ladder, what it's like to work in the field as a woman when you're dealing with male farmers who are treating you like you don't exist. Think just stuff that women experience specifically in the environmental field. And there's women who are forced into sales because they have pretty faces, you know, just things that men can't even think of happening. So sold out event for TBAP that year and sold out every year since. And then the women who attended wanted to have events in between. So we would go kayaking. We went to see Hidden Figures together. We did like some really fun, just like go out and have cocktails instead of beers, and it's been really great. So we wanted to bring that to the national level, not necessarily as something that the national level has to do, but just being that role model, saying this is something that TBAP did. And maybe your chapter wants to do something the same. So we wanted to showcase that as something you could do. So now for the conference, we're having a networking event finally in person. We've done a couple more of those sessions virtually with the breakout rooms, but we're finally going to do it in person. So it'll be Wednesday, the 18th from 6 to 7 in the Sky Terrace area, Cash Bar. Beautiful view. So it'll be a really nice hour. We're going to have networking games and name tags and stuff. And I think we're going to try to do something to identify like mentors. And we're inviting students from the local universities. We want young people to come. And again, the whole thing has been a lot centered around mentorship and really trying to create a space where those women early in their careers can meet with women who've been in their careers longer and help them with a step up and advice, just navigating everything.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like I say, it's one of the reasons I like doing the show with you, because you have this like just awesome aura, and that's such a good thing to do. And I love that it's happening. I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to not being able to go. That's I think it's incredible.
I look forward to your support and telling other women about it, that they should
absolutely
go. Yes, be there in spirit.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know I have a coworker that's going to be at the event with me, and then guess where I'm sending her? Yeah, she's doing that. Yep. if she wants. But yeah,
awesome,
really cool.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, I hope to see a lot of women there. Again, we try not to have like exclude the men. And there's some women who are like, we can't exclude the men, and that's fine. So male allies, I guess I would say, are not excluded. But at the same time, this is not a place to pick up women. And if I find you there, I'm gonna.
Oh my God.
You just don't want to even know.
Yeah. No, yeah. I got scared a little when you said that. Oh, yeah. It's going to be a great time. It's going to be a great event. I think that's Wednesday at 6 p.m. Wednesday, May 18th.
That's it.
So there you go. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too, for sure.
Hello and welcome back to EPR. Today we have Callie Veelenturf on the show. Callie is amazing. She's a marine biologist, conservationist, and National Geographic Explorer. She is the founder and executive director of a nonprofit organization called the Leatherback Project, and launched an international conservation advocacy campaign called Rights for Nature. Callie is also a 2020 National Geographic Society Early Career Leader, United Nations Youth Representative, and Fellow for the Explorer Club, and a young professional with the United Nations Harmony and Nature Program. Welcome, Callie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me.
I mean, I was going to start with how you got into marine science, but first, how do you manage to do all of those things?
I think I just have this fire inside of me and it just keeps me going at all hours of the day and night. But I have to tell you, I'm working on work-life balance right now. So definitely a goal of mine for 2022.
But hey, that's a good one. You know, we all need that. We do. So, but what brought you to marine science? Why did you choose that?
I think I always knew that I wanted to be a conservationist since I was a kid. You know, there's photos of me at age 3 and 4 with frogs and snakes. One photo of me with a Band-Aid on my finger from where the snake already bit me and I'm still holding it. And I think that it was in my senior year of high school, actually, I went to this environmental leadership lab program in Hawaii, and I saw my first sea turtle there. Wow. And it sounds super cheesy, but I had this underwater eye contact moment with the turtle. And I just felt totally injected with this responsibility to protect the marine habitats and the species that inhabit the ocean. So I think that's really like a moment that sort of pushed me more in a trajectory towards ocean conservation.
That is awesome. That's a great, great experience. I love that. And I'm really fond of sea turtles, so I'm really trying not to geek out with you right now. But but I want to talk about what you're working on in Panama. So you're doing work in local communities and government agencies to document new sea turtle foraging habitat and nesting grounds. So we have an idea of why sea turtles, but really, what are you doing for them right now?
So the Leatherback Project, the organization that I started, we work in Panama and Ecuador, and we're basically trying to answer the questions that we need answered to conserve sea turtle species in the region. So, for example, in Panama, there's this archipelago called the Pearl Islands Archipelago that I had never heard of before a couple of years ago. And there are over 200 beaches there and many different reef ecosystems that have never been explored before. So we hadn't documented, what are the different species that are nesting here during what parts of the year? What are the major threats facing their survival? So documenting the species assemblage and their activities in the Pearl Islands is what I applied to National Geographic to study. And that's how I became an explorer. So what we're working on is patrolling these nesting beaches during the nesting season to understand what percentage of the sea turtle nests hatch. How are the sea turtles doing? What are their threats facing survival? And then we're also doing diving on different reefs to understand what are the different sea turtle species occupying the reef habitats. And, how big is this population? So what are the species? How many of the different life stages are there? Are they being illegally consumed? Things like that. And we have found, in fact, that in the Pearl Islands, there are several different threats to sea turtles, including fisheries bycatch or accidental catch in fishing gear, and also the illegal wildlife trade. So hawksbill sea turtles in particular, their shell is absolutely stunning, as you may have seen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the shell is used a lot in different artisanal jewelry making and also in the creation of spurs for cockfighting events in Panama, which is still legal. So we're working to combat these threats in the archipelago and work with the local communities to do so. So on our most recent research expedition, we had young community members, as young as 4 years old, that we were putting gloves on the kids and they were helping us with, sterilizing the area on the sea turtle where we were going to tag them and, scanning the turtle for the identification tag under the skin and just participating in all of our research activities. So I think we've left a spark of sea turtle interest in the community that, may not have been there before. And I'm excited to go back and keep working with these budding marine biologists down there.
Well, that's incredible because, you talked about your own experience, right? And you're giving people that experience, and that's got to be really rewarding.
Oh, it was so magical. The last trip that I went on in December of 2021, we brought out he's 9 years old, local community member from Isla Saboga. His name is EDL. And he went snorkeling on the reef for the first time, the reef that he grew up on but hadn't been out to.
Oh, wow.
And he saw his first green sea turtle underwater, just like I had in Hawaii. And it was so magical to see his eyes bug out underwater. And we just exchanged these underwater high fives. It was really magical. And I can really see in him a desire to continue doing this type of work. So it's exciting to have the community buy-in.
And that really is. And that's absolutely incredible. And I love that you're somebody who likes to bridge the gap between science and policy, which, has been a struggle, I would say, over years. It's not always as easy as it seems. So you're collaborating with senators in Panama on new marine conservation legislation. So what are you doing to kind of break down those barriers?
So I have noticed, as you mentioned, that sometimes it can be hard for scientists to bridge that gap because we do our work, we analyze the data and we publish the papers, but oftentimes those papers don't get directly incorporated into policy. And, that's been something that's frustrated me ever since my undergraduate degree. And so after the National Geographic expedition to Panama, and we first came back with these really compelling images of the sea turtles and the threats facing their survival there, I had a colleague that was able to contact or make a connection with the First Lady of Panama and an environmental senator, Juan Diego Vázquez. And what we decided to propose is a law recognizing the rights of nature. And those are the rights of nature to exist, persist, and regenerate her vital cycles. This is a really exciting and revolutionary concept, something that Ecuador first really established on an international stage in 2008 when they acknowledged the rights of nature in their constitution. And then Bolivia followed suit in 2010. But since then, we hadn't really had a major generalized nature and countrywide law recognizing the rights of nature. And I was hoping that maybe with Panama, given that it's more of an environmentally minded country, we might be able to restart a new wave of rights of nature legislation internationally. So, presented to the senator, presented to the First Lady. they were really excited about the concept. And we immediately went into drafting the law with different environmental senators. I reached out to the Earth Law Center that has a base in the US, because they're pretty much the experts in rights of nature legislation in the world, in my opinion. Right. And they were really instrumental in making the law as strong as it is. And, it was presented in September of 2020, and then it's been debated. And now it is sitting on the president of Panama's desk, waiting his signature. Wow. It's been approved by all other levels of government. It's really exciting. And, we're hoping that any day now in 2022, we could be getting the news that nature has rights in Panama. And it's super exciting as well, because this type of rights verbiage and rhetoric, it means that nature has personhood rights. Right. So the same way that, a child or an elderly person or a disabled person can be represented in a court, this is how nature can be represented as well. So any Panamanian citizen, if the president signs the law, will be able to bring a court case on behalf of nature.
Yeah, which is really incredible. And like I say, I'd heard about Ecuador, and you're right, I hadn't heard anything else since then. So it's really incredible to do. And so how do you get so many people behind this? Because that's such a hard thing to do. Like, how did you do it?
I think it's just a matter of having lots of conversations and repeating the message over and over again. And I think if the passion that I may have for it can be instilled in, the person that I'm speaking with, then they carry the conversation, and it's kind of exponential from there. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of the discussions we had were really fiery. I remember sitting and talking to the senator, and I remember some of his legal counsel that were sitting on the side of the presentation being like, "Oh yes, like you tell it, sister," like, kind of like egging me on to keep going, like almost like we were in a church setting or something. And it was like, wow. Hallelujah, and I felt like we really struck some chords with it. And I think that's really it, that the concept speaks for itself. I mean, the concept is so powerful, and it's mind-boggling to think that corporations have personhood rights, mm-hmm. and nature doesn't. How can we give rights to a non-living corporation more than nature that sustains us? It's just something that seems so tangible and something that seems so obvious that needs to be rectified. And honestly, I think it was the concept itself that perpetuated itself.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard for people, I think, to even conceptualize that. I bet you most people don't even know that businesses have those rights, because it doesn't make any sense. And so I don't know, with conservation in general, messaging is always really important, and who hears the message and who takes it to hold. So do you have any advice for getting your message heard, in not just in with senators, but even just in general with the general public?
I think being authentic and not being afraid to share the message, no matter how you think it may be received by others. I think that's really important, and something I learned in Panama, because I found myself questioning, who am I to present this concept to these people? Why would they listen to me? But I thought, instead of assuming that I'll have a negative reaction, or instead of assuming how people will respond, I just decided to put this concept forth in the best of my ability and give it a shot. And so I think if we can work to break down those mental barriers that oftentimes limit us, I think that's something that takes a lot of self-reflection and, inner work. But in the end, it makes the work much more impactful.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's a great answer. I mean, yeah, we can have her back, Kara. Absolutely. But you've had a lot of really incredible experiences. You really have. But I know you've also dealt with some very difficult ones. You've had to fight for your rights to a safe work environment. And I do want to let our listeners know that we're going to talk a little bit about sexual harassment, which I know is really challenging for some people, but it's a really important conversation. So I'm sure there are details you can't share about your experience, but I wanted to give you, can you give us an overview of what you had to deal with?
Sure. And I mean, I think it does tie into the rights of nature work, because having to defend my own rights, I think, helped me bring a rights perspective to the conservation work. But yeah, starting in 2018, I worked for a conservation organization out in California. It was a very small nonprofit with no HR department. And, a long story short, the executive director ended up becoming obsessed with me and falling in love with me and harassing me on various levels, in and out of work. If we saw each other for, quote, work experiences outside, like maybe going for a lunch to talk about like a lunch meeting, or, we had a staff event on a beach. There's every single opportunity that was available to make me uncomfortable, but basically was taken.
Yeah.
And, just like months and months of sexual comments and manipulation and, photos taken of me without my consent. And, it came to a head one night when I felt like I was like physically trapped in a situation that I didn't want to be in. And no matter how much I voiced my discomfort and like asked for him to leave, he wouldn't leave my car. And that was the point that really pushed me over the edge. And I wrote a letter to the board of directors. And it was an 11-page single-space letter detailing all of the dates, times, and quotes that I could remember. And then I ended up going to mediation. So I ended up finding a lawyer and mediating the case, which ended up resolving in a manner that was, quote, agreeable to all parties. But I refused to relinquish my right to talk about the facts. So I can talk about what was said and when it was said in my experiences, because I think that that's really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. And I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. But I want to say you did a lot of things right. You wrote down your occurrences. You had other women help you avoid one-on-one conversations when you could. And then you became an advocate for yourself, like you just said, through the legal system. And that takes incredible strength. So I want to ask, like, what other advice do you have for women who find themselves in similar situations?
I think it's important to write down what happens. And that's how I process, is I journal. So for me, I was already keeping a Word document of all of the upsetting situations to remove them from my mental space. And that, of course, became vitally important in the legal case. So I would say, that's a step one. And then also making sure not to isolate. So I think being in a small nonprofit organization, it was easy for me to be isolated because one-on-ones with my supervisor, who was also the ED, was kind of just a normal part of my workday. But I think that avoiding that type of a situation as soon as there are any red flags, and making sure to ask for others to be present. I had an intern friend that, anytime I was asked to be in a meeting, oftentimes it would be outside. So he would actually remove me from the office, and like we'd go sit in chairs out on the lawn away from anyone. And I think that was also part of his strategy. And so I would ask an intern friend of mine to walk by and just like have an active presence around me if possible. And so I think surrounding yourself with people that can be advocates is also really important. And also just making sure that you support with your choice of employment environments that have clear structures in place to combat these types of issues. Because for me, like I said, my direct supervisor, the person I had the problem with, and the ED was all the same person. So me following the handbook and talking to the person I had the issue with, then talking to their supervisor, then talking to the ED was all the same. And I think that, the handbook shouldn't have been written like that. And it's been now since changed. But yeah, I think that there are many ways to safeguard. So also talking to people that have worked at the organization you're applying to before, and make sure there are no issues that you might be able to learn about before accepting a position. All of those kinds of things are just really important. And just know that there are many people out there experiencing the same thing, and many people that haven't stood up for themselves that want to be able to, and that you're not alone. And don't suffer in silence. I waited 6 months to say anything, and I could have said something much sooner.
Yeah. And again, thank you. That's great, and really, really, really powerful. So I do appreciate you sharing that with us. And I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did say something. I'm glad you're here telling other people about this as well. And I think one of the things that's really inspiring for me is that this incident had led you to become an advocate for safe and equitable working environments in the sciences, talking about how small nonprofits need better plans for HR, for example. And you mentioned a little bit about how that experience influenced what you're doing now. Can you kind of maybe elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so I think just having the safety net of having rights, I don't think I even realized that some of the behavior that I was experiencing was illegal. So sometimes when things are on that line, it's like, it was really a relief to me to go to a lawyer with my my worksheet of all of my data times and quotes and have them say, this is illegal. Like, you have rights to not be experiencing this. And then, of course, the legal system just carried it from there. And I think thinking about how that problem was solved through the legal system, I mean, it's not perfect. Obviously, there's so many problems with it. But just having a positive experience, I remember just thinking, wow, there are so many issues that I'm trying to fight, so many problems I'm trying to solve in the environmental sector, but a lot of the structure isn't in place to combat these issues the way that maybe it should be. I think that nature should have rights to exist, persist, and regenerate her vital cycles. And I think that a lot of the corporations that are in place today, they simply put obstacles in the way of the destruction of nature, or they put limitations on destructive activities or a price, but it still occurs. And I think that when something should be illegal, it should be illegal. And I think that we need to take that next step with nature.
Yeah. And again, it's very well said. And thank you for sharing that. And I say there's almost no graceful way to segue out of that, but you have so much going on, and I want us to spend some time on that too. So I know we've only kind of scratched the surface on what you're doing. So what other projects are you working on?
So something I'm really excited about is decreasing fisheries bycatch, or like I mentioned, accidental catch in fisheries in Ecuador. So in the East Pacific, the leatherback sea turtle, or the largest sea turtle in the world, they can be up to 10 feet long and weigh 2,000 pounds. They have 7 subpopulations, so they can be found in different places in the oceans. But in the East Pacific, they're critically endangered. So back in the 1980s, there were as many as 35,000 leatherback sea turtles in this region alone. And now we think there are less than 1,000. So maybe around 700. And the major threat facing their survival is fisheries bycatch. So in Ecuador, I'm working with different nonprofit organizations like Mare Nostrum and the Leatherback Project, and also Mundo Ecológico. And we're working with a Safety Net Technologies, which is a bycatch reduction technology company in the UK, to create this multi-sector project that deals with university students, the fishing community, the government, and the nonprofit sector. And we're trying to address fisheries bycatch using technology. So there are these green LED lights that when you place the lights on gill nets every 20 to 30 meters, it decreases the bycatch of sea turtles anywhere from 40 to 93%, but it does not significantly affect target fish catch. And this is because sea turtles, seabirds, and cetaceans as well, they can see a spectrum of light like ours, but bony fish species have a light visual spectrum more concentrated in the blues and greens. So they don't necessarily see the green LED light is different from the surrounding blue ocean. And that's why they are not affected. But a sea turtle will see that the net is there because of the lights and will not become entangled. So we're hoping to launch this pilot project to test these lights within the artisanal gillnet fishery for 6 months. And we'll have vessels that will fish in pairs. So one vessel with lights, one vessel without. And then at the end of 6 months, we can see, okay, what percentage of turtles were caught here and here, and also the target fish species. And we're hoping that, if we see the results that have been seen around the world, that hopefully we'll be able to actually implement these lights within the next few years throughout maybe even 30% of Ecuador's gillnet fishery. They have around 15,000 artisanal vessels in the water, which is quite a lot. And turn the situation around for the Eastern Pacific leatherback before it's too late.
Wow, that is so cool. Oh my gosh. I'm trying not to freak out. That's amazing. So I'm really going to get a little nerdy here for everybody, and I'm sorry in advance. But, so I studied box turtles in grad school, right? And one of the things we looked on was life cycles, and we used modeling data for sea turtles, which had basically said it's much better to conserve and save adults because they lay thousands of eggs than to save thousands of eggs because they don't all become adults, right?
Exactly.
That blew my mind in general, because I just hadn't thought that way. And so now you're telling me there's a new way to save adults even better than we have been doing before. That's so cool.
Yes, exactly. And that's actually why we're focusing on bycatch reduction, because it is the adults that are getting caught the most and getting removed from the population the most in the gill net. So, and they say that 1 in 1,000 sea turtles makes it to adulthood. So It's exactly what you said, that when the sea turtles have already reached that age in sexual maturity and they're reproducing, that's when we really can't lose them from the population. They've already passed so many obstacles to make it to that point.
Right. And how long do they live, this little leatherbacks? Do you know?
We don't know exactly because they can't be kept in captivity. Leatherbacks are pelagic. They're not reef dwellers. So if you put a leatherback sea turtle in a tank, it will just swim into the side of the tank. It won't swim in a circle like the other species. And, anywhere from 50 to 100. But honestly, leatherbacks are likely living much less than that now.
Oh, it's just too bad. But I want to ask you, so we talked through the things you're working on. So what do you see as the future of conservation? I mean, I think you're optimistic about it, but I want to ask, are you?
I am. I feel like the only way I can get through this is by being optimistic. And I think that the rights of nature work that I've seen already be successful in Panama gives me a lot of hope for the future. We're also working on a sea turtle conservation law in Panama and incorporating the rights of sea turtles into the law. And I mean, again, don't know if it will be passed, but it's looking good so far. And I think that just seeing how this type of legislation can change the way that society is legally obligated to consider nature in all levels of decision making it's really mind blowing. And I think it's revolutionary. And I feel like we're on the cusp of a rights of nature revolution. And I'm going to be right there in the streets advocating for the rights of nature till the end, till my last day. And,
right.
I think if we could get the UN to create, a universal declaration on the rights of nature, the same way that there's a universal declaration on human rights, after World War II, that's when the Universal Declaration on Human Rights was created. And it's after like a global tragedy that this type of unifying document came about. And I think right now we're in another global tragedy that's a result of our lack of harmony with nature. And so I'm hoping that if there is an end to COVID, that we will be able to reach that same place and create some type of a unifying document recognizing the rights of nature, which would then really give me hope for the future of the planet.
Yeah, man, that's excellent. Very well said. And I love too that you're saying not only are you doing this turtle research, but you're also taking that and putting it to policy, which, I think people sometimes don't see those two things happening. So it's really, really cool. I love the idea.
I think that sometimes too, scientists have a unique voice in the policy setting, right? Because politicians and environmental lawyers are what you expect to see in the policy realm. So when a scientist steps into the room, I feel like there's a different energy there. And I feel like maybe I've even been able to be more effective as a scientist than as a lawyer or as a politician in just getting this one concept across. I mean, I wouldn't know what to do with pretty much anything else relating to law, but I think that, it's been enlightening for me to have this experience. And I really hope to work with other scientists and, support others in bringing their science to the political table. And just, you have nothing to lose at this point. We just need to see what happens.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, really, you don't, I mean, worst case, it's the same as it was before, but best case, you have a rights of nature in Panama. So,
right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Just on a more personal note, you're also neurodivergent, which is you differ in mental or neurological function from what's considered typical. But in your case, was it synesthesia, where you see senses in different ways? What is that, and how do you deal with it?
It's synesthesia.
See, I knew I'd say it wrong.
It's most common in left-handed women. I'm left-handed. And it's a neurological condition in which two senses are simultaneously stimulated in the brain. Scientists actually think that it's possible that all humans are synesthetes or have synesthesia when they're children or in the womb. And then as we grow, those connections break. But in some people, they just don't break. And I'm one of those people. So for me, I read in color. So every number, letter, music note, accent, punctuation has a different color, and it's always the same. So H will always be hunter green. Sea will always be lemon yellow.
Wow.
And, you know, it also, when I listen to music, I see like projected colors in front of me. And also like those colors naturally bring temperatures as well. So different people in music can have different like physical experiences for me. Yeah. Wow. So I like to describe it like, you know, people are kind of confused. It's like, well, if it's written in black, can you tell it's black, even if it's in color? And I think a good way to think about it, the only way I've ever figured out that people can somewhat understand what it might be like is, you know, if you have like your mom, your sister, and your grandmother, right? Mm-hmm. And they're all wearing a black shirt. It's like when you look at your mom, you can see she's wearing a black shirt today, but it's still your mom. And like the identity of that person is your mom. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what it's like where, you know, C can be wearing like a black shirt or a white shirt or a blue shirt, no matter like depending on what it's written in, what font, what color, but it'll always be a yellow letter.
Right. Right. Wow. That's so neat. And, but does that mean that do you enjoy music? Do you have to be like, oh man, this is going to really take me out, so I need to be really careful about when I listen to things, you know? Or is it different than that?
I really do enjoy music. I think that it does affect my emotion, but you know, it's really hard for me to know if it affects me more than others because I don't know what it's like to not have it. I only figured out that I had it when I was 17. So it took me a while to figure out I wasn't, quote, normal.
Wait, was that like, how did that conversation go about? You're like, man, yeah, this yellow sea is really driving me crazy. And someone's like, what are you talking about?
It's actually kind of a funny story. I was in junior year anatomy class in high school, and we had to do our, you know, end of year project. And so the teacher brought us down to the computer lab, and we were all sitting at a different computer trying to research what, you know, sickness basically we were going to be presenting about. And, you know, the girl next to me, she's like, whoa, this is really cool. And she started talking to me about like, you know, these people like read in color and whatever. And I just kind of leaned over and like read the screen. And I was like, everybody doesn't read in color. And she was like, no. And then I ended up doing synesthesia for my like end of year project. And yeah, that's kind of how I found out, was literally like in class, just realizing that, you know, a problem that people have is something I have, but I don't see it as a problem. I think, you know, I think it's just, I really have no idea how it affects me, but I feel like it helps me to think creatively because I just see colors where there aren't any. And I'm sure that stimulates my brain in some way.
Yeah. And it's it sounds actually quite unique and almost, I'm afraid to say wonderful, but it does. It sounds quite cool. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And,
yeah, of course.
And we're getting close to the end of our time, but you talked about work-life balance. And so I'm going to ask you, what do you like to do in your free time? Or maybe I should rephrase it to be, what do you like to do once you have free time? Once you get that, what do you like to do for fun?
I think it depends a lot on where I am. Because I travel a lot for work, I don't necessarily get to see family or friends very often. So, you know, pretty much the only time that I'm not working when I'm where I grew up in Massachusetts is when I'm with family or friends. I just like to make time for them, of course. But when I'm abroad or, working in Panama or Ecuador, I love scuba diving and snorkeling and just being in the water, having interactions with nature, just even going on a walk and having the trust in a squirrel that it doesn't run away from me and it looks at me and checks me out. I mean, that's so exciting and fascinating to me. So I think really whenever I can, I just try and get out in nature and just experience the wonder of this world. And I think that kind of refuels me and to continue fighting for it.
Yeah, that's great. And you've been fantastic today. A lot of great advice, a lot of really cool things that you're doing. So if people want to reach out to you, where can they get in touch with you?
People can reach out to me on social media, just my name, Callie Veelenturf, or you can email me at callie@leatherbackproject.org.
Awesome. Thank you, Callie, so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor and a blast.
Awesome. And that's our show. Thank you, Callie, so much for joining us today. It was such a great interview, doing really incredible work. Can't wait to hear more about rights of nature and all that stuff that you're doing. So thank you again for being here. Please be sure to check us out each and every Friday. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. See you, everybody.
Bye.